Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Stan Lee. This is a brand new documentary that just premiered a few hours ago on Disney Plus, and I just got to watch it just now, and it's after 2 a.m. because I got a late start. But it is an hour and 26 minutes long, and yeah, like I said, just came out a few hours ago. So I think the only other place it's been seen before was like at a film festival or two prior to this. But it tells the story of the life of Stan Lee. And for a man who would have been 100 years old this past December, that's pretty dang impressive. He almost made it. There was a point where I think we all believed he was going to outlive us all, outlive everybody who's ever read a comic book written by him. It seemed possible for a while. But it's this 1 hour and 26-hour documentary just came out this evening, and I am very tired. Sorry. It tells the story from his earliest days, what inspired him, where he came from, and I've heard a lot of these stories before. And if you've heard a lot of stories from Stan before, well, you're about to hear them again because a lot of this is built completely. This is a documentary about Stan, technically in Stan's own voice. It's yes, made well after his passing, but it's all audio cobbled together from archived footage, interviews that he's done over the years at conventions and colleges and just TV shows and talk shows and things like that over the years. And Stan has this charisma. If you've ever seen him in person or even just seen him on TV, and you just know he has that kind of charisma where he could you get him going, he could go for a long time. And he likes telling stories. And he loves interacting with people. And so it was. You'll get to hear a lot of the history of Marvel, of course, Timely Comics, Atlas Comics, and then eventually what became Marvel. And you get to see all the big names pop up, although a lot fewer than I thought. Of course, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Roy Thomas, each of these people show up in the story of his life because they were kind of hugely influential. Marvel wasn't made just by Stan, even though, and there's been a lot of drama that comes out of this. I thought they were going to ignore it, but they didn't. You get to see, although it is kind of really downplayed to a certain point until you get to a certain radio interview with Stan and Jack fans. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. We get to see Stan as a kid and growing up and what drove him, and then you see him getting his job, working with magazines and eventually comics and everything else, and you get to see his rise to fame, and you get to see the rise of Marvel's fame and the rise of all their characters, modern gods and monsters, in a sense, modern mythology brought to life in the pages of four-color comics. They touch a little bit upon the seduction of the innocent era in the 50s when the comics were all horrible and scary. There's a lot of touchstone moments that are mentioned throughout this. Of course, 1961, the creation of the Fantastic Four, the Vietnam War, when the counterculture, the teenage counterculture primarily, was rising in influence, and how Marvel reflected a lot of that, especially since their audience was very young, not just young as in 10 and 12-year-olds, but as in college-age students, the ones who were being sent to war. That was their audience, and nobody was all too happy about that. So we get to see. I could go through the whole thing, but I'm not gonna, because why would you watch the documentary then? You should hear it in Stan's own voice. It does seem like a really high level kind of story of Stan. It does not get deep into the details and the drama and the behind the scenes stuff and the tensions between the creators, except for that one very important radio interview in the 80s. when Stan called into an interview with Jack Kirby, and the host was doing his best to diffuse what seemed like a very pleasant conversation at first, and it turned fairly tense, somewhat politely tense, but you'd have to see it. Honestly, if you've never heard the Jack Kirby interview with guest appearance by Stan Lee, well, this is your opportunity to get the highlight reel, and that's what this is. You get to see it. You get to see his life, the story of him and Joni and JC, their daughter, is touched upon, and of course it finishes off with the era of Marvel in mainstream pop culture for what was once considered trash entertainment for children. Has now become one of the biggest movie and television franchises in world history. It's kind of impressive, and it's all thanks to people like Stan, Jack, Steve, Roy, and so many others. But Stan is seen as the main man behind it because he was always the most vocal. He was always the one who was kind of given the job after a while when he became president. He was kind of given the job of not so much writing comics anymore, writing every comic, which it seemed like it was for a while. He moved on to being their cheerleader, their propagandist in a sense, and connecting with the audience all over the world. I know that, and I said this a couple nights ago when we had the other Marvel 75th anniversary documentary, which was totally by chance. I did not plan on that. My first experience with Stan Lee, I literally went to San Diego Comic-Con 2004, my first San Diego Comic-Con, and possibly like my second or third convention of my entire life. I'm walking around preview night, an empty preview night, which if you've ever gone to San Diego Comic-Con recently in the last 15 years, let's say, preview night is not an empty night. It is the busiest night. I'm walking around a mostly empty hall, just sort of taking it all in. There's a giant tractor trailer under a sheet promoting a movie for the Transformers. It looks like probably Optimus Prime under that sheet. There's just sparsely populated booths here and there, small crowd. And as I've walked to one end of the building, I turn around to walk back. Here comes Stan Lee, right at me. He has two guys on either side of him. They don't look too threatening. But my brain just sort of snapped in that moment. I never thought that I would meet Stan Lee. And first of all, the first night of Comic-Con, yeah, he literally came right at me. I barely had to divert my path, and I just walked right in front of him, held out my hand, shook his hand, and said something I hopefully was something he wanted to hear, something praiseworthy, just like, oh, thank you for everything, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, thank you. I don't even know what he said. I just know that I met Stan Lee on the opening night. And I've met him many times since, but it's usually over the course of getting an autograph or something like that, and they used to shuffle people through pretty quickly. But that was the first, just one-on-one, 2 seconds, 3, 5 seconds, I have no idea. We could have been standing there for 40 minutes, and and I probably wouldn't have known. It's like, we're closed now. I don't know. But it's Stan has obviously had a great influence on me and so many others. No matter what you think of him, and if you've read the more in-depth stories and things like that, just so you're wondering, no, it does not touch on any of the controversy that it was no fault of his own that went into his later years of his life between family and friends, supposed friends. Yeah, none of that's covered. It's really it's really kind of a laid back, upbeat, chill, just walk through history. Let Stan tell you the story as Stan knows how to, and it ends on a really upbeat note. It doesn't even make mention of any of that drama or his passing. It doesn't treat it as him passing either. One of the things I do have to mention, I find it really interesting how they did this. The obvious thing when you're going to tell the story of Stan Lee is you want to kind of maybe make it look like a comic book, animate it in a way, maybe like panels and stuff like that. That seems like the obvious choice. But what they did early on in this, especially for the parts of the story in which there is no footage of his early life, you could see in the detail just how close up they get to these figurines. They made these little, they 3D printed figurines of a young Stan and Jack and a bunch of other people in his life, and made the offices, and you got to see they depicted Stan's early life completely in 3D little figurines and sets that somebody put together. So it's a neat little thing. It's all, it's beautifully shot. It's in such high res detail, but yeah, it's a different approach than I was expecting. And I had no idea Stan's forehead seems so big on my body. Oh, he looks angry. He looks angry now. Okay. Yeah. If you're a Marvel fan, yes, obviously you're going to want to watch this just to sort of kick back. But again, do not expect anything intense or deep digging, no scandal. This is in Stan's voice. This is Stan telling the story. And of course, he's not going to talk crap about himself. He was his own best cheerleader. But yeah, it's a nice, neat little tribute to the man. And you get to see his dreams played out as he enters the universe he made, interacting with the characters played by Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans. You get to see him interact with those people late in his life as he did cameos in all the films. So if you don't know who Stan Lee really was, this is a good, fun way to check it out. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
363.
363. I thought you were just going to sit silent there for a second. 363. Come on. 363. I'm sorry. There is a lot of documentaries in this, but as I've said before, the great thing is there's a lot of diversity. Other than this Stan Lee related thing and the Marvel one 2 days ago or so, those kind of bump up against each other. But every different other documentary we get seems to be very different from the last one we had. Like, we don't get two sharp ones in a row, which is good. Is real good. This one, I have no idea. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but I don't know exactly how they're going to pull this one off. But I'll just have to show you. It's restaurants at the end of the world. Yeah. Restaurants at the end of the world. Like apocalyptic restaurants? Or is they eating a lot of bugs or something? Or is it just like the farthest reaches of the world and people who staff restaurants? I honestly don't know. I'm tired. I'm going to bed, but I'm still going to put that one, watch that at some point tomorrow and talk about it, or the Saturday. Yeah, it's Friday now, but it's early. So yeah, I'm getting mixed up. Restaurants at the end of the world on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye. Excelsior.